First, I want to talk about the relationship. Let's write down, I'm going to write down a 90-degree angle. See, I made this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This is obviously a right angle. Would you agree? Now, I want you to look at the distance. This distance right here. Looks like it's right at 2 inches, isn't it? You guys see that? Zoom in a little more. It's right at 2 inches, isn't it? Now, what happens, what do you think is going to happen to that when I start to make this angle a little smaller? I made that angle a little smaller there, didn't I? And I want you to watch here more than right. Okay, here it was just right at 2 inches, wasn't it? What is it now? It's a little over 1.5, right? Does everybody see it? Can you guys see the numbers pretty good? Okay. And I'm going to keep this the same distance. And I'm going to make this angle even a little smaller. What happened to this distance here? So here was, we said it was what, 2? Then we made the angle a little smaller. It went to almost just a little over 1.5. Then we made the angle even a little smaller, and it went to under 1.5, didn't it? Okay. Now let's make this angle bigger. What happened to this side now? Huh? Well, how long is it now? This one was 2, right? And now it's a little less than 2.5. So it got what? Let's do that again. Let's make the angle even a little bigger than that. How long is it now? Let's see. We started with it right at here was right at 2, right? Then it went to what? A little under 2.5, and now it went to a little over 2.5, didn't it? So, as the angle gets bigger, what happens to this dotted line? It gets what? Bigger. As the angle gets smaller, what happens to this dotted line? What do this angle and the dotted line create? Like this right here is this would be called a what? That's a triangle, isn't it? What's this called? So, would you say there's a direct relation between this length and the size of the angle? If the angle gets bigger, this side gets what? But I want you to think of, and this is going to be the corniest thing I'll probably say all year. It's got a little stick man standing here. I want you to think of an angle as his What does that look like it is? His arms. Isn't that beautiful? As corny as that is, as his arms get, as this angle of his arms gets bigger, what happens to this side? It gets longer, right? If his arms get what? Closer together, it gets, does that make sense? You guys see the point I'm getting at? The size of this angle right here relates directly to the size of that. So with that in mind, I am going to draw, with little stick man and that figure there in mind, I'm going to draw a triangle. Now I know you can tell on this one, but let's say that this is about 55 degrees. And let's say this one is about 85 degrees. What would that make this one? Anybody? About 40 degrees. Because these two together would be 140. Okay. Let's call this A, B, C. My question to you is list the sides from smallest to biggest. I know that I've got a picture up here you can look at. But without using a ruler, how could you figure that out? And thinking about what I talked about up here, what do you think we could do? I didn't tell you anything about those sides, did I? What did I talk to you about? The measure of each of these angles. Which stick man has his arms open the least? The guy at C, right? So what do you think? What's the shortest side? Shortest side would be A, B. Because it's opposite the guy holding his arms out what? The littlest apart. Everyone agree? You see the point I'm getting at there? So what would be the one in the middle side? Why? Because he's in between the guy that's got his arms 85 and the guy's got his arms 40, right? Because he's only got them 55 degrees open, right? So that would be BC. And then the longest side would be what? What would the longest side be? You don't even have to know anything about the sides if you know the angles. Does that make sense, this concept? If you look at it like this, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It's just a matter of which one's got his arms open the most. Okay? It's got the biggest angle, doesn't it? Now in this section, they'll ask you to list them from longest to shortest or what? Shortest to longest. So in this, the actual answer you'd probably write here would be AB, comma what? BC, comma what? Because they asked you to list them from what? Smallest to biggest, or smallest to largest, however you want to say that. Now, what if I had a triangle This one's going to be kind of tough. You couldn't, and I ask you, list the angles from largest to smallest. Now, it's kind of hard to see, isn't it? You can't just go by what it looks like, does it? What if I told you, though, that the length of this side here was 8, the length of this side here was 9, and the length of this side here was 10? So which one, when they asked, this time they asked us to go from what? Largest to smallest. Is it the same concept going to apply here? Which stick figure has his arms open the most? Exactly right. Because he's holding what? Something 10 long with his little stick arms, right? So angle Y is your largest. What would be, what's the next one down? Angle X would be your one in the middle. Once you get this, it's really easy, but it could be confusing to you. And what's the smallest? Isn't that a pretty easy concept? Just getting that written down, and then we'll do a couple of problems from the worksheet. I'd say key things, these are the type that you ought to get right on the test. We all know that when you take a test, and you guys didn't do as well in the last test as you should have. You did not. I think it'd always be smart to recognize those ones when you're doing a review and you're studying ones like this, right? That are pretty easy. Hey, make sure you dominate those on the test so it gives you some leeway on ones that are a little harder. List the angles in order from greatest to least. We're on number 1 on 7-3. Everybody got this up here? Make sure, or I'm sorry, they say what? Least to greatest, see? What's important, you better, that's the mistake you'll make on here. You got to make sure and do it how they ask. You can have the concept right and not read the question. So which one's good? They want the least. Which one is the smallest? What do I need to find? The smallest what? To find the smallest angle, I need to find the smallest side, which is what? 36 millimeters. All I have to do is look and see which angle's holding that side, and that's what? Angle K. Well, then what's the next smallest side? Tell me. 38. What's holding that side? So angle L. And you have to put angle L. And then what's the largest? Everybody see how to do that? Here. What's the smallest? To find the smallest angle, I need to find the smallest side. 1.5. So that's what? Angle what? Then what's next? Which is angle what? And then angle what? Q. We can do that, can't we? List the sides from least to greatest. To find the smallest side, I need to find the smallest what? Angle. What's the smallest angle here on number 4? I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. 50 degrees. What's the smallest side then? Then what's the next one? DF. And then what's the biggest? Don't be surprised if they label these incorrectly and they don't draw them to scale to see if you're paying attention. You hear me? Don't look at what it looks like. Go by the numbers you've been given. Okay? Number 7, identify the angle with the greatest measure. To find the biggest angle, I need to find the biggest what? So it's what? Angle B. Remember, we got to label. They ask for the angle. On the next one, identify the side with the greatest measure. They don't give you an angle, but what do all the angles have to add to? So this is 79, this is 49, what's this one got to be? Well, what's 80 plus 50? 130 minus 2, 128's left, so this one has to be what? 52? Is that right? So find the side with the greatest measure. Find the biggest side. I need to find the biggest angle. What's the biggest angle? G, 79. So what's the biggest side? HI or IH, either or. Can we do that? You guys liking this section?